guy just let in. Is it? Yeah, he's back there. Mm-hmm. And how do I know when this is on? I guess on, right? There we go.
Changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war and poverty. Oh, wake up all the watch. much have to say. They're the ones who's coming up, and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. The world won't get no better if we just let it be. Na 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 na. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, girl. Just you and me.
It's about time. Time to wake up your mind. Time to be informed, engaged, and empowered. It's time for the Eric Dawson Radio Show.
Just wanted to call and say what's up.
Oh, it's you.
Hey, bro.
Yo, what's up, man?
We're listening to you.
Thank you very much.
We've got news from Essex County, New Jersey, and beyond.
In obscene terms, he said,
Accountability starts here.
Now give me a beat.
I'm concerned because we haven't elected people who, to me, have the acumen to begin to try to figure it out.
It's the Eric Dawson Radio Show on RTH 2000.
All right, so this is Eric Dawson. This is the Eric Dawson Radio Show. I'm going to ask you to close that door. Hey, guys, welcome to another episode. This is 95.1 FM. If you guys hear noise in the background, we had a gas leak in the building, and that's what's going on right now. PSE&G is here. The fire trucks are outside. But we're still doing the show. This is community radio at its best, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And so I'm here with my guest, Beatrice
Carter.
Beatrice Carter. I hear all kinds of stuff.
B.
Lady B. Who I had the pleasure of joining you on your show that you had on another station. And that was a memorable show for me.
Yes, it
Right? Anyway, we're going to have a conversation, a very serious topic today, guys. We're going to be talking about bullying. Right? And I got an opportunity to read a post of yours which caused me to inbox you and ask you if you'd be willing to come on and talk about it. When you posted your post earlier that day, coincidentally, I had been on the phone with a parent from Newark. I can't mention her name, but she told me that she had been dealing with her son being bullied for 2 years now, and that she has gone through the proper protocol, contacting the school, having these meetings. I guess counselors and everybody is supposed to come together and try to figure this out. The parents from the other kids have come into the school, but it hasn't stopped. The administration, she told me, is not as responsive as they should be. She told me that she had gone down to the Board of Education and had talked to them, and they haven't been as responsive. She now has an attorney. So when she called me, I said, well, what do you want me to do? Now, she's also got a therapist for her son now.
Wow.
Right? Because she's concerned about suicide.
Right.
And so I said, well, okay, somebody put you in touch with me. I said, but what I do is I will blow it up.
Yeah.
Right? I'll make it very, very public.
Right.
And so she said, no, I don't want to do that. And I said, well, why not? She said, well, because I don't want my son to be ostracized. I don't. Right. She said, if you begin to do that, Eric, then in the community that we live in, we will be ostracized. She said, at the end of the day, I still have to live in this community. And though the bullying takes place in school, there's a community, a neighborhood that we have to exist in. And I don't want to be known as or seen as a troublemaker. I don't want my son to be seen as the son of the troublemaker, which would just cause more bullying.
Absolutely.
Right. So I said, well, you let me know what you want to do. Fortunately enough, there's some terrific people that I have access to at Channel 7 News, at Channel 2 News, at Channel 4 News. We have our community news channel here, and we'll do whatever we need to do. But I'm happy that you came in. So before we get started, I want to give the call-in number, and I'm going to try to post it in at some point in the thread. But the call-in number is 973-672-1271. Again, 973-672-1271 or 973-677-3753. So, Beatrice Carter, Lady B, what's going on with you?
So, Eric, as we discussed, when you reached out to me, I was in a very emotional state of mind because my daughter is unfortunately being bullied in school. And as a mother, as a parent, period, you want to be able to protect your children. You want them to feel comfortable coming to you discussing these issues. But the world that we live in today is not what it was, when we were growing up. So there's a lot of peer pressure, with if you come to your parent and you let them know. My daughter knows how I am, how I can get when it comes to them, to my children. Very overprotective. I'm coming to the school, I'm speaking with parents, I'm having meetings with the principal, and so she didn't want to tell me because of the same reason why the other mother didn't want the exposure about her son being bullied, because unfortunately if your parent comes to school to defend you or take up for you, that causes more bullying. It's like, oh, you had to call your parents and now the kids are picking on you because of that. So she came to me and she said, Mom, here's what's happening. Because at this point, the girls were texting her, telling her that they were going to jump her at school. So at this point, she's fearful now because it's a group of 6 girls who were texting her cell phone saying that they were going to beat her up at school the next day. So she told me everything that was going on. And then I got her phone. We have to be more, involved with our children. And I like to trust my kids, especially my daughter, because she has this innocence about her. But she was involved in, she had this group chat thing going on. So I went through her phone and I check my kids' phones randomly. I go through their phones and they don't know when it's going to happen. But if there's anything in there, that's not supposed to be in there, you're going to get in trouble and get your phone taken. Needless to say, I went through her phone, and the things that I saw in that group text just devastated me. I mean, these girls were calling my daughter every type of name you can think of, screenshotting pictures of her where her hair wasn't done, and everybody's saying how they're going to drag her at school. That was the language that they were using.
And what does that mean?
To drag someone obviously means that you're going to drag them, to beat them up.
Oh.
Physically
drag them?
Physically drag them, like by their hair. And so I was like, this can't be happening again. But my daughter was so scared. She told me all of the things that this girl had been doing to her since school started, coming up to her, pinching her, punching her in the chest, throwing her up against the locker. She would just walk up to her, pull her hair. And my daughter, she doesn't know how to, she wasn't built like that. That's not her character to fight or be angry or aggressive. She's just everybody who knows my child came to her defense because they know Faith is a sweet kid. And so it's upsetting to me as her mother because I know my daughter. And she was allowing this girl to do that. But in her mind, she's saying, well, she's my friend. She's only playing. And I'm like, no, Faith, she's not playing. This is not how you play with your friend. She's bullying you. And she's playing you, actually. She's not playing with you. She's playing you.
Right.
That's what mean girls do. So I went to the school I called the principal that day to let him know what was going on, told him about the group chat that they had going on. I screenshotted everything just so that, they wouldn't have a chance to erase it and say it never existed. So the principal's whole way of how he decided to handle it, I felt was just wrong. I think immediately you need to call all the parents of the children and let them come in, let them know what's going on. He wanted to meet with all of the children, have a conversation, and do all of this stuff. I was adamant in saying I want to meet and have a conversation with the parent of this child, because I need the parent to know what their child is doing to my child.
Right.
And so we did all of that, but the parent was she was worse than the daughter, unfortunately. The daughter sat there and admitted everything that she did to my child. The mother not once apologized to my daughter for her child's behavior. She never once, tried to give my daughter any sort of comfort. She was looking at my daughter like as if she was mad, and then she said to my daughter in front of me, "Well, your daughter's sitting up here acting like she's all innocent." And I'm looking at her like, are you kidding me? And the principal had to literally tell my daughter to leave out of the office because the woman had become so offensive, to a child. So I said to her, well, I can see where your daughter gets her behavior from now.
So the mom was not apologetic. The mom was not supportive, not empathetic.
Right.
And this was in front of administration and everybody else in the school. Mm-hmm. So at this point, and did you have counselors intervening at that point as well?
There was a counselor at that point. I just decided. I let the parent know. I said, well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to press charges on your daughter. Mm-hmm. And because I can't have a conversation with her. She was, you can't have a conversation with somebody who's unapologetic and empathetic and who just doesn't get it, who is going to allow their child to do that to another child and not reprimand your daughter.
Right.
So I just decided to take another route, which was go to the Board of Education, file an official bullying complaint against her child. And I have some attorneys involved as well, because this is all happening on the premises of school, on school premises. Her glasses were broke. The girl broke her glasses in half. All of this is happening in school. And so I'm like, where are the teachers when all of this is going on?
And so now, you've gone to the Board of Education, you filed the formal complaint. The administration knows, the teachers know, and so how are they intervening now?
Now, I made a suggestion that the girl be removed from the class because she is the initiator of the bullying, and she has her team of friends who she brought into it with her. So it's about 6 of the girls.
Right.
So I told the principal that I wanted the girl removed from the class, because my daughter shouldn't be removed when she have her peers that she's been in the Maplewood school system her entire life almost. So she shouldn't have to be separated from her peers because of this little girl. And so those are the steps that they're taking.
And so now they're considering removing the young lady?
Right.
Just from the classroom or from the school?
No, from the classroom.
Okay. And so the bullying is particularly by this one young lady, but she's leading a group of other people to bully as well.
Right.
And so have there been suspensions, detentions, any other kind of thing?
There hasn't been any.
No disciplinary.
No discipline. And that's why I'm so furious, because I feel like the school system is dropping the ball. Not just in Maplewood, but I hear stories all the time in different districts where the administration, they don't take it seriously. And I feel like it's mostly in the urban communities. Like, they don't take it serious when there's complaints about bullying.
Right.
Just yesterday, actually, my cousin, he goes to Bloomfield Tech. And he was being bullied by this gentleman who would be texting him and calling him out his name, calling him, just all names that he shouldn't be called, and anything but the Son of God. And so he had been dealing with this all this whole school year, just dealing with the boy, bullying him. So he got upset. This was the straw that broke the camel's back yesterday. My cousin gives me a phone call, and she's like, I gotta go to school and pick up Miguel because he just had a fight. And he got so upset, the boy was calling him from another cell phone, calling him out of his name, standing behind him, mushing him in the back of his head in front of everybody. So he got up out of his classroom, walked into the boy's classroom, and just clocked the boy. And the kid is way bigger than him. But he had, at that point, he snapped. He had enough, and he walked up in the boy's classroom and clocked him. Our kids should not have to be put in that predicament to have to come out of their character and
defend themselves because they're in a system that is not doing the job in defending them. And so, as a parent, how does it make you feel?
It makes me feel sad. Like, I literally cried that whole night. I just couldn't stop. I was so sad, and I was not just sad for my daughter. I was sad for the other young girls because I'm questioning what's going on in their homes. How are they being raised where they feel like this is appropriate behavior? I teach my kids about humanity, humility. My kids are very humble. They watch their mother give back to other kids. Through my Kicks for Kids program, through everything.
Great program, by the way.
Thank you. With everything, as you know, Eric, I'm very active in the community when it comes to public service, doing social work, feeding the homeless, whatever it is. So my kids are always exposed to those type of things, so they're very humble. But when I don't know the culture of which these kids are coming from. But I was just sad at the fact that...
Please hold, caller.
I was sad at the fact that these children were just ruthless and reckless with their words, how they speak to each other. And I feel like there needs to be some sort of course or a curriculum and class in school where they're teaching kids about sensitivity, just like they have sensitivity training with the police officers in different areas of in the government. And so I feel like there should be some sort of sensitivity courses with the kids at school, because obviously they're not being taught at home.
Now, did you ask if there was some sort of conflict resolution, sensitivity programs, those kinds of things?
There's conflict resolution supposedly, but it's really not. It's not like they're not enforcing it. I feel like it could be greater than what it is. Growing up in high school, we had a very strict conflict resolution counselor where you had an issue with someone, you would stay in that room all day until you worked it out.
Right.
And so they're not doing that, and I think because maybe it's middle school, they don't. They're not taking it as serious as that.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a second. Let's take this caller. Hello, caller.
Hello, how are you? Hi, Eric. Hey, madam. This is Melinda.
Hey, I hear a lot of feedback on your end.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Are you on speaker or Bluetooth or something like that?
No, I'm not on the speaker.
Okay, I hear a tremendous amount of feedback.
Hold on.
No, go ahead. Let's see if we can do that. Go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Much better.
Hey, Melinda.
Okay, hey.
How are you?
Madam, how are you? Hey, Eric.
How's it going?
All right. Madam, how I feel about Faith. I'm really upset to hear about this happening to her like that. She doesn't deserve this. And as you said, there should be some type of curriculum for this.
Right.
And I'm glad you didn't go madam on them, and I'm glad you held your composure and went about it the right way, So I just wanted to say, I'm really upset about this, and I know as everyone else is. So I just want to tell you I love you and get Faith a hug from me, okay?
Thank you for your support. As a mother.
Thanks for the call.
you know, when someone is fighting, when your child comes home and things are broken on her and she's, you know, bruised up and things are missing, and when you put all the pieces together and you come to find out that it was all, you know, due to bullying, you become outraged. Like, I was so outraged, Eric. I could have punched somebody.
Here's what I want to ask, though, right? Like, I remember growing up as a kid, and there were a lot of bullies. Yeah. And, you know, I grew up primarily in the weak-wake section. But when my both parents had to go to work, I had to stay with my grandmother who lived in Seth Boyden. And as a result of that, for 2 years, I didn't go to Maple. I went to Dayton Street School. So it was a completely different culture for me. A set of friends that I didn't have, because I had my neighborhood friends over on Vassar Avenue, right? But I had school kids that I went to school with, and they all grew up together in Seth Boyden. Yeah. So I dealt with the bullying, right? And so my first year there was culture shock for me. And, you know, you had these huge families, right? 24 people between the brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles, and such. And probably the first 5 or 6 months, I ran home, right? Like, and I didn't even want to go to my grandmother's house. So I was in the 2nd grade, and I would run from Dayton Street all the way to Vassar Avenue, for you guys who know the distance. So I would have to call a please hold and turn your radio down. I would have to, I would scale that huge fence where the golf course is. Yeah. And in between people actually playing golf, I would run through the golf course all the way to Elizabeth Avenue, then run down Elizabeth Avenue, then run up the street to get home. And halfway along that route, almost every day, I had 5 or 6 kids chasing me. And finally, my dad said to me, he said, you know, you're not going to run anymore, right? Which is what parents do. They say, you're not going to run anymore. And so he enrolled me in karate school, so I went to the KA system on Springfield Avenue. And my father said, you're going to learn how to defend yourself. And in the middle of that, there was some additional things that I did to defend myself, because I figured, you know, going to the karate school, you know, first day I'm not going to be able to defend myself, right? Second day I'm not going to be able to defend myself.
You need a little bit more practice.
I need a little bit more practice. So what I did in the middle of that is one day I snuck a butcher knife to school.
Oh, wow.
Right? But I want you to understand, so this is the seriousness of it, right? So 2nd grade, I snuck a butcher knife to school because I'm figuring nobody is helping me. Everybody sees what's going on and nobody is helping me. So guess what? I'm going to help myself. I'm going to take care of it myself. And the teacher, we were doing a class assignment, and just so happens that the butcher knife fell out of my coat and it landed on the floor. I got sent to the office, right? All hell broke loose in the school about me bringing this butcher knife to school. But the question that was raised was, wait a minute, for how long have you all watched this group of people, kids, chase Eric down Dayton Street, over the fence, and you didn't do a damn thing. So now Eric decides, in his world, the only way that he figures he can defend himself, that he's going to now do that, and now Eric is in trouble. So it becomes a real big concern. I'm going to finish that story in a minute, but we're going to take this call. Hello, caller.
Good morning, Eric.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning to your guests, by the way. I'm calling to tell you that the KE system started in the playground of Little Bricks, where I grew up at, Kareem Abdullah. And you have Ali Muhammad, Smooth, and most of us, we grew up, and the KE system started right in the playground before it got to Springfield Avenue. But that's just one story. But I just want to tell the mother, don't give up your fight. because bullying goes way back to when I was a kid. It made me a hell of a fighter, but my children are not made of the same material. And I just want to say that continue to fight for them, because it follows you all the way up to adulthood, and then there's no guarantees. So, and it's important that the kids are comfortable going to school, and this bullying thing has always been, but really gotten out of hand, and it affects the learning process of the children. So do your fighting for your children, and make sure that we read, because it takes place on jobs, it takes place in school, it takes place in places where people trying to focus on doing what they do. And bullying must be addressed. I think bullying is like apple pie in this country. So I'm proud of you as a mother, and your children should be proud of you, because they got a mother that fights for them. And that's what I really wanted to say.
Well, thanks for the call, caller. So, it has been something that has always occurred. And we had to stand up and fight. In my neighborhood, you learn how to fight. You got bullied, or, and my parents, and not saying that it was right parenting, but my parents would say to me, at some point, you're not going to run home anymore. You're going to stand your ground, right? You're going to fight. And, there were fights that I fought where I lost. There were fights that I fought that I won. But, my father always told me, he said, listen, if you're fighting somebody who's bigger than you, he said, you still fight him. He said, but you want it to be such a brutal fight that even if he wins, he don't want to fight you again. Like, literally, that became the mentality. And it, what it does, though, is it hardens you. Right? It strips away at your humanity, because you almost feel like you're in this jungle. And like the caller said, and then if you're in this school environment where you should be able to go, and it's a safe place for you to learn, right, and to grow and to experiment and to do all of those things in these very formative years, for you now to have to harden yourself to do battle day in and day out. And I did some research about this. Kids don't want to go to school. They don't function well in school. They wind up with emotional issues, eating issues, and it does, as the caller said, it carries out through your life, self-esteem, all those kinds of things. And so it's incumbent upon the school, the administration, the Board of Education, to really understand the impact of it, right? Because it's beyond just saying, I want you to stand there, don't you run, because that's what I was told. Don't run no more. You stand there, and if you run, or if you get your ass kicked when you get home, that's what
Ari, let me tell
that's what my parents told me. Well, like, if you get your ass kicked, then I'm gonna kick your ass again. So now I'm thinking, like, okay, so I gotta put them up, and I gotta go for it, because it's gonna be like, I can't swing back when I get home, right? I'm gonna have to just take an ass whooping when I get home. So I gotta stand here, and then I gotta do this real brutal thing, right? This subhuman thing in the street in order to exist, to survive.
Unfortunately, we just live in this dog-eat-dog world where we have to sometimes make an example out of someone, and like this gentleman said, these kids are cut from my daughter is cut from a different cloth. She wasn't raised around any of that stuff. So because me growing up, I had to fight. I always had to fight, and so as parents, I think our millennium parents are more, sheltering their children. They don't want to expose them to different things because of what we were exposed to. And so I teach my daughter, tell the principal, do this, do that. So I never taught her that she had to fight, But me growing up, I had the father like you. Like, if you get your ass beat, do not come home. you know.
and I'll tell you what else my father did. Actually, it wasn't my father. It was my godfather, my Uncle George, who did this. This is at Dayton Street School. Mm-hmm. Because he I swear he did this. At this point, I was in the 3rd grade. He came, and there were a whole bunch of kids who wanted to fight me. Yeah. Well, there was one kid who wanted to fight me, but he had, God only knows how many cousins or people who said they were cousins of his. So they were waiting outside at 3:15. And I'm in the office, and I don't want to leave, right? Because I'm like, oh, man. Right. You know, because you fight this one, you got to fight the next one, you got to keep going, and they jump you, all that stuff. So my Uncle George came. He drove me to school the next day, and he went, this is the 3rd grade. Wow. He goes to his trunk, and he pulls a baseball bat out. And he said, okay, you know what? He said, Eric, who was out here for you at 3:15? So I said, well, he wanted to fight me, but that's his cousin over there. That's his cousin over there. He said, okay. He said, listen. He said, right here, right now, you want to fight him? He said, you fight a fair fight. Right. And my Uncle George stood there with a baseball bat. Now, I'm not condoning it. I'm simply saying this is the world that we grew up in. Right? And so now, as I'm whooping this kid's ass, I'm thinking to myself, well, my Uncle George's not gonna be here at 3:15. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still have to come out at the end of school at 3:15. Right. But there were parents, there were guardians, right, who would come to school to ensure that there was a fair fight. Like, if you really want to fight, right, let's end it. And here's the other piece that was done, and I'm literally almost this close to condoning it, but I know that you shouldn't. But you got to deal with the bully, right? Somebody's got to deal with the bully. But one of the things that they did too was they said, well, it ends here, right? You want whatever the issue is, if right, go ahead, and then it's over. The fight is over. No, there were no bricks, there were no sticks, there were no bats, there were no guns, there were no knives. Your hands, right? And at the end of it. And I remember this too, getting up, you had to dust yourself off, and you say, all right, now shake hands. Right. Right? All of those kinds of things, and it's hard to use the word civility when you're talking about fighting, right? But the civility or the humanity, whatever existed in the confrontation and the escalation and the feeling that you actually needed to throw hands in order to get to a place of peace, there was still some structure there. Right now, there is no structure, and some of it is that you have parents who have grown up dysfunctionally, right? And they're unleashing their children who they didn't parent properly on society, right? And so when you now take your child and figure, okay, we live in a different place. We've all evolved, right? And so, you know, like you said, your child's not built that way. Your child's not built that way because you didn't raise your child like that. You hope for a better place than you were in. Right. But when you now coexist with people who have not evolved, they suffer from arrested development. Your child is now bunched up in that savagery.
That's true.
Right? And now you're trying to figure out how to make it work.
Right. And that's the sad outcome about the whole situation.
Hello, caller.
Hi, good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
Good morning, Beatrice. This is Dawn. How are you?
Hey, Dawn. I'm doing good.
I went to my grandson's school the other day for bullying. Someone called, his school called me because he was doing the bullying. Oh. Yeah, I know, it broke my heart. And when I got there, I had to speak with the mother of the child, the little boy. He's only 7. And she said that my grandson has been messing with her son for a long time. And no one ever told my daughter.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like, well, how come this behavior has been going on and no one has told me or his mom? She breathes, she takes care of him, but they have my number as well. So you have both of our phone numbers, and no one ever told us that he has been picking on this little boy.
Now, how old is your grandson?
My grandson is 7. Okay. And he is a handful. He's very busy.
Now, in talking to him, did you ask him why?
When I talked to that, no, I didn't ask. I told him if he touched that little boy again, I was going to kick his behind. That's what I told him. I know why. He's busy, he's a boy, and he's really playful, and he really didn't understand the term bullying. So I explained it to him. He didn't know. He's only 7.
Right.
And I don't think they talk about that in school. They should, because it's going on so much, and children are killing themselves behind that. So they should talk about it in school. They should have, what do you call it, when they get in the auditorium and they have people come in and discuss this with them.
Like the little lectures
really
and things. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, one of the things, Dawn, that I read yesterday as I was preparing for the show is older bullies. That's why I was asking how old your grandson was. When they interviewed, say, 13-year-olds, they were saying that they experience almost a high from bullying.
Wow. Really?
Wow.
They said that there is an adrenaline rush from bullying, and that when they do it, like it's like a spike. It's almost like one of those energy drinks where boom, you get a spike, and then it goes down
until somebody kicks their ass.
Well,
I told my grandson, I said, you know, you're starting this young. I explained to him what bullying is, and I said, you know, eventually somebody's going to kick your butt. And I told the little boy to knock him in his head next time he touches you. As my grandson, I don't condone fighting. I don't want to see my grandson get hurt, but you're not going to continue to hit somebody else. Knock him upside his damn head, and next time he does it, I'm going to come to school and I'm going to tear his butt up. I'm not going to, because I know I'll get locked up, but if I could, I would whoop his butt in front of the whole classroom. I'll show him what a bully looks like.
See, Dawn,
you start it young, you can do it when you get older. You're going to end up getting your ass kicked, getting locked up. Something bad's going to happen to you. This is bad behavior, and the school has to. The kid keeps telling the principal, keeps telling the teacher, and nothing gets done. Then they feel deflated. Like, what else is there for me to do?
Unfortunately, the parent that I had to deal with didn't take on your attitude. That's what I would have done. What Dawn what you did as a grandmother. If I found out that my child was bullying someone else, I'm gonna get in they behind. I'm gonna be very apologetic to the parent and to the child. But the parent that I dealt with, she was just all team for her daughter, and she's like, my daughter would never do that. My daughter is innocent in this whole process, and I'm just like, she just had no remorse or sympathy for what her child done. It's hard hearing that your child is the bully, because you want to think that you raised them.
On the parents' behavior. See, that child, it happened to my other daughter. My other daughter, she's 19 now, but when she was in elementary school, a little girl kept stealing her stuff. And I'm like, well, how is this girl stealing your phones, your iPad? Like, what is going on? So I pressed charges on the little girl. And when we went to court, the girl's grandmother came in, and she was high, and she was like nodding off in the courtroom. And I felt so bad for this girl, because I said, she doesn't have a chance. She doesn't have a chance. But I didn't drop the charges. I kept moved forward, so we have like a judgment. Of course, I'm never going to get the money, but it doesn't matter. It's just a lesson. She needs to learn a lesson. But she also needed to be taken out of wherever home she was in. We don't know what these children are going through in homes.
So, Dawn, let me ask you a question, if I can. Is your grandson an only child?
He's an only child.
Does he have cousins?
He has cousins, but most of his time is spent with his mom. Okay. But he has cousins. He has lots of cousins he plays with. He's just really, really, really active, and his way of trying to be friends is I don't know. He wants to play. He's just a boy. He's like a rough boy. He's bruised all over the place. He's always falling down. He jumps on everything. He's just rough and rugged. And you can't... The society is like stifling boys right now. You can't behave that way anymore. In the day, it was okay to run around and jump and play and fight, but you can't do that anymore. And he doesn't understand that.
I don't think it's just a time and place for everything. And I think when you're in school, like I told the young ladies, when you're in school, you're there to learn, not to fool around and play and do all of this other stuff. But I think as parents, as long as we continue to have a dialogue with our children and let them understand, what's wrong, what's right, so that they can know how to place that energy, let them know, grandson, this is not the time for that. This is, you may think it's playing, but it's actually you're hurting this person, and they don't want that to happen.
There's a terrific book. There's a terrific book, Dawn. And I didn't. There's apparently a girl's version of this, but when my son was born, because I had already had 3 girls, and I knew I was going to have a son, and I was fearful because I'd raised 3 girls, and I'm like, okay, I don't know where to begin with a boy, and my former boss bought me a book called The Wonder of Boys. Right? And anybody who has a rambunctious young fella, I would urge you to get the book, because it talks about innate energy and innate that boys are built a certain way based on what their DNA is designed to do. So as hunters and and protectors and such, fighting and climbing and throwing and doing all those things were necessary in order to be able to survive, right? And a lot of that is still in our DNA, but it's, as Beatrice said, it's how you channel it. And so the Wonder of Boys talks to you about channeling it. So it says if your son or grandson likes to climb, don't tell them don't climb, just tell them where to climb. Right? If they like to throw things, don't tell them don't throw things, just give them a place where they can throw things. Right? Because it's gonna be build up in them to throw. So, I created an area out back where, I put targets up on trees and other kinds of things, and he could throw if he wanted to, put ladders and stuff outside, and he could climb, he could do all the things that he wanted to do, but there was a place to do it, and the school is not it. But if you don't create that outlet for them, right, then they're going to figure out on their own where to do it, and it's going to be an inappropriate place most times. And I'm sure that the book on girls, which is the partner of the Wonder of Boys, probably talks about very, very similar things.
Yeah, that's a great book. I'm going to have to get it from my daughter.
And then call back and let me know what you think about it.
I will.
All right. Thank you for the call, Dawn.
I wish you luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. So, leadership, though, is needed in this matter, in a really big way, because I don't know that your daughter is at this point, but again, in doing the research for today's show, if you look at the spike in suicides and suicide attempts, it occurs because I'm going to ask you to hold 1 second, caller. It occurs because people reach a breaking point. Right? And they try to cope, and And there was this one young girl who attempted suicide several times. I was watching a documentary, and she said, I don't think I can do it anymore. She, it was summer break, and she said, going back to school, if it doesn't get better, I don't think I have it in me to do it anymore. And this kid was 10 years old. And you're looking, and the mom is there, and the dad is there, and everybody's sobbing. There needs to be, and I'm gonna withdraw a little bit of what I said earlier, because it seems like Dawn is a very conscientious guardian, right? That she raised her children properly. So sometimes I guess there are just instances where you have a child who needs to be managed, right? It's not that you are a neglectful parent. It's just that you have to be more hands-on than you probably are right now in order to be able to manage them. Let's take this call. Hello, caller.
Hello?
Yes.
Good morning, Brother Dawson Shockley.
Good morning.
Excellent conversation this morning. Some of the other problems, though, I don't know, maybe I missed it. But we also have to look at what we have our kids doing, as you said earlier. Because now our kids are just watching these video games and doing that kind of stuff. And then they're going to movies, and let's be for real, the video games and the movies might makes right. So when they see these things going on, they don't realize that it's bullying. And we do have to give them other outlets. Like we grew up, we had after-school programs, we had ball. A lot of these things have been cut off from our children. So they have all this pent-up energy and all this stuff that they're internalizing and watching on TV and the video games. They don't have a way to channel that properly. And we really do need to address some of that. Because, again, if you don't give anybody outlet, I had 5 other brothers in front of me. So if I got out of line, they would tune me up, you know what I'm saying, and straighten it out, even my sisters. So we have to look at trying to give our kids more outlets and things to do, because they're just running around in this concrete jungle, and nobody's giving them any direction, any outlets. Like you said about climbing, I was a crazy climber, and they didn't know what to do with me. And then my father was like, oh, let's take them to the park, let's take them to these jungle gyms, and then I could climb to my, to my heart's content. And I would get it out. It was in a safe environment. If I fell, I wasn't falling on concrete or something where I bust my head. And, that's some of the things that we're not doing in school. And then the parenting part, that's a big problem, because we've been having babies, raising babies for so long, and they're coming out of broken homes. They're coming out of dysfunctional homes. So there's a lot to be done in that area. And we just can't just smack a label of bullying on it and think that's going to be the cure-all for everything. We have to really get with those parents, get with those kids, find out what's going on.
Right.
Because they do have a lot of energy, especially boys. And girls have energy, too. We shouldn't act like they, because my sisters and them were playing ball. They were cheerleaders, so they have that energy, too. It's about channeling that energy and letting these kids know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. I'm sure we've all experienced kids in a mall or kids in an area where they shouldn't be running or showing out, but they do, because, that's a part of the parenting thing. We don't tell them that, it's a quiet area. You can't do that.
Well, what about socialization, too?
Right.
Shockley, so socialization, right? You were talking about video games and things like that. I remember as a kid, my parents would just send me outside to play.
Right.
Right? I mean,
don't come back in the house.
Right. When I was up on Leslie Street, man, the kids, they would come knocking on, my friends would come knocking on the door on a Saturday, 8 o'clock in the morning. My mother would say, he hasn't even eaten breakfast yet. So then I'd rush and, shower and make my bed up and eat breakfast, and then boom, I was out the door. And just like you said, I saw him at lunchtime. I came home at lunchtime, and then, when the street lights came on, I had to be, so I had those kinds of rules, but I was out playing. Then when I had my kids, I learned about this thing called play dates.
Right.
Right? Where it wasn't just about, when I was a kid, I would just go to the park. If kids were playing basketball, I had to figure out how to socialize and play along. I didn't have 2 adults there trying to create the relationship and best friends and then let Eric play. I had to figure it out, right, and socialize. These play dates, I'm concerned about them, because what they do is they don't teach kids how to socialize on their own, right? You have supervised socialization happening, and so now when the parent's not around, the kids don't know what to do, right? They don't know how to get along, how to talk, how to whatever, and then when you further isolate kids through video games and such, I think that it all, Shockley, impacts things, and we start to see what we're seeing now. And look, again, I'm not saying that bullying hasn't always happened, but to the extent that it's going on now, where young kids are committing suicide. They weren't committing suicide when I was a kid.
I think because now there's so many devices, so much impact. That the kids have access to more things where they can influence a crowd of people, like social media and all of these Snapchat and this and that and that. Back then, they didn't have that. If you said something about somebody, you know, you talk bad about them. Oh, so and so is this. Now, you know, there was no phones. You can take a picture of somebody. You know, somebody can record you, you know, doing something inappropriate, you know, and then they can send it to the world, you know. And so back then, you know, they didn't have access to that. I'm sure there were kids that felt like harming themselves, but it wasn't out there. Nobody talked about suicide because it didn't exist. But now, today, I found out that suicide is prevalent amongst the African American culture, you know, from the ages of 5 up to 14. Yeah. You know, black people are killing themselves in droves, you know, and it's sad. You know, how do they even know what suicide is? They don't know that it's a permanent thing, you know. Yeah. In their head.
Say it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Right.
That's what suicide is.
Right.
Hello, caller.
Yes, Eric, this is Al Montgomery again. I forgot a real major point that I wanted to make. Let's not forget America teaching people that using might to get results. That's a big thing. I think parents are up against that also, is that the society is teaching using might to get the results that they want. They're not teaching conflict resolution or sit down and learn something. They're teaching using might to get what you want. So we have to deal. Parents have to deal with that too. So I didn't want to make that point. All right, thank you.
Thanks. So when you live in a community where what Al just said is the case, where, you know, folks believe that might is right, you know, it's a dog-eat-dog world, the strong survive, the weak perish, all of that kind of stuff, right? And so now you throw your kid in the midst of that. What are the alternatives? I mean, one is to just pack up and say, you know what, I'm going to try to find a more civilized community for my child to grow up in and not sacrifice my kid. The other one is to, you know, stay and try to fight it.
Right. I think, you know, Maplewood is a great school system. It's just, unfortunately, you have some people that grew up differently who are now in that, you know, environment. And so I think it's not about taking your kids out of school or anything like that for me, because I want to teach my daughter and my sons how to survive in any environment. Nobody's going to push you out or run you out of something. You're going to deal with this. We're going to deal with it with integrity, and we're going to handle it appropriately. But I don't think taking, you know, it depends on, like, if it was like a crazy school, like South Central or something, you know, that would be something different. But this is our home. This is where we built our home. This is where we live. We're not running away because of because a group of girls. So I'm raising, you know, adults at the end of the day. I have to teach them how to be adults, and teach them, like, you have to face this issue one way or another. And like I said, parents are not having the dialogue with their children, you know, and there's no leadership, like you said. There's no example for some of these children to be able to look at and say, you know, oh, this is how I want to act. This is how I want to be when I grow up, you know. There's too much influence from, you know, ratchet TV and all sorts of things, where all our girls now have to look at is watching Real Housewives of Atlanta, watching everybody fight, throw drinks on each other. So this is the culture in which our children are being raised, where they're looking at grown women and grown men, you know, fight.
Well, and then that's not it, right? But then for those who have the smartphones that you were talking about, you have all of these Facebook pages and YouTube channels where you have fights.
Yeah, fights.
Fights, just fights and fights and fights. And, I'm shocked to see adults posting those things up on social media.
I hate it.
And I went through last year blocking probably 2, 3, maybe 4 dozen people from my page because that's what they wanted to promote, and I said I don't do that.
Right.
So if when you said teach my kids to survive, that was heartbreaking to me because they should be living, not surviving.
Right.
They should be living. They should be exploring.
Right.
Right? Not surviving.
Right.
Especially
not in the school, setting. And that's why I said, I'm fighting this more than just filing complaints, because I'm very active in my community. I'm going to sit down with the Board of Education and see if there can be some sort of curriculum where they're teaching the kids conflict resolution, where there's courses about bullying.
And teaching parents too, not just the kids, but you have to teach the parents, right? You have to, it's a little more difficult, right? Because you got to get the parents to want to come in, and some of them may not want to. But the idea of building and creating and sustaining a community of people who understand the adverse impact of this, right? To get them to kind of circle the wagons and say, look, none of us want our children to grow up this way.
Right.
Like the caller said before, I don't want my grandson to be a bully. And then you have the other person on the other end say, well, I don't want my kid to be bullied either.
Right.
So then how do we come together and have a discussion about how to resolve that? And I wish I would have asked Diane, was that her name?
Dawn.
I wish I would have asked. And Dawn, if you're listening, maybe in the thread you can post it or call back in. I wonder if Dawn reached out and said, you know what, maybe one of the things that we can do in terms of supervising this is have my grandson invite the other guy over to the house, right? And then we can try to see if we can teach them how to play properly, right? To take the energy that my grandson has, and to show him how to, how to expel some of that energy, but in a more positive way, in the presence of other kids.
Right.
Hello, caller.
That's important.
Yes. Hello.
Yes.
Yes, this is Laverne Jordan.
You're breaking up. Your phone is, the reception is bad.
Okay. Yes, this is Lavarius Jordan. Can you hear me?
A little bit clearer.
Okay. I'm actually I'm in L.A., California. So the city is a little you probably can't hear me a little bit, but.
Well, I'm excited to have a caller from L.A. That's pretty cool.
I'm talking about because I'm actually going through a crisis like that right now with my son. Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, I may have to call back.
Okay.
I may have to call back. I'll call right back.
You're going to call right back? All right.
Sure. Okay.
All right, so I'm looking forward to that call right back. I'm excited that that this is reaching all the way out 3,000 miles away. But the issue is not just here, right? Not just in
it's everywhere.
Maplewood. It's everywhere. And I'm very interested to hear a man talk about going through that with his son. But I don't know. Like I'm paused because I don't know. I think I'm beyond it, but I'm not even sure, right? Hello, caller?
Yes, this is Lavarius Jordan.
Oh, much better. Thank you.
I'm actually in L.A., California.
Okay.
Love the topic you guys are talking about, and I'm actually I'm going through just like that now at my son's school, and part of that would be the school he goes to is all Hispanic school, and so I just yesterday to this school and had a conference meeting with the principal and the principal, because he, for one, he has a issue with a speech impediment. So, and predominantly of all the children that go to the school, 85% of the kids are his students. And so he has the one kid in him, and it's been constantly going on for like maybe 2 months. And so, and now dealing with the issue with him concerning him getting bullied every day. Things are not being taken care of in the school with the teacher, the aides that are outside in recess. And so everything you guys are saying is so true. I agree with both of you guys concerning, at home with the parents, they should be able to have a system in school about bullying, even with the parents as well, to identify these situations, these issues with our kids. And I also believe that, charity starts at the home. Mm-hmm. And so it's important for us parents to really take action in certain areas with how to keep our kids intact in proper, the word I'm looking for, how to conduct themselves, as little children and as in adulthood, especially. And so, my question is, I have a question. Mm-hmm. Do you guys think that even with the issue of another ethic, it would be like almost sometimes a race issue concerning kids being bullied at school, etc.?
Right. So what I'll say to you is yes. And I gave an example many months ago on the show where my third oldest daughter, mm-hmm. when she was a sophomore at Governor Livingston in Berkeley Heights here in New Jersey, which is a predominantly white school. I think at the time that she was a sophomore, she may have been one of 3 black children in the entire high school. Mm-hmm. And as of that time, she had never even experienced a black teacher in the school district, right? When Eric Garner was choked, mm-hmm. and they were really going through the, I can't breathe.
Right.
She bought a shirt that said, I can't breathe, and she wore it to school.
Right.
A few days later, roughly 24 white kids came to school with shirts on that said, I can breathe.
Wow.
Right? So my daughter said, I really can't breathe. I can't do this.
Right.
And living in Montclair, I extracted her, or her mom and we extracted her from the school, mm-hmm. and we enrolled her in Montclair, mm-hmm. where she got to experience kids who look like her,
right,
who understand her culture, teachers, her first experience with black teachers. So yes, caller, I would say that sometimes race can have something, and in fact, I'll go further and say that the person I was talking about earlier today, who mm-hmm. I'm not going to mention her name, it is a Hispanic school predominantly that her son goes to.
Right.
And so she's concerned, because he's an African American, about the community,
right.
About how she'll be ostracized, how her son will be ostracized. So, I mean, these are all things that,
right.
We have to take into consideration, right? So you have the dynamic. Your situation, Beatrice, doesn't have anything to do with race. These are these African American girls who are, right? So, if you already have the bullying, right, that's one layer. But then you can compound it with additional layers, right? Layers of racism, layers of sexism, layers of other kinds of things, and that we have to be very, very cognizant of, caller.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But even in our own culture, even in our own race, we can bully each other because of the color of our skin.
Well, we've done that, haven't we?
Right.
Absolutely.
Because my daughter's light skinned, and the girls who are bullying her are darker than her. So I don't know if that goes into with it. So you get bullied if you're light skinned, if you're too dark. So we do that within our own.
We've got pretty girls bullying, not bullying,
so,
not so.
yeah.
And I'm using my air quotes because I think everybody's beautiful, right? But you've got all of these different layers of bullying. Right. You have skinny girls bullying overweight girls.
Right.
You have buff guys bullying overweight guys. But it does start at home, I think.
Absolutely.
Right? And then it can be out of control at home. Mm-hmm. But then whoever the guardian or the parent is at home has to recognize that they have an issue.
Right.
And you can't just take your issue and just put it out there in society and say to society, that's your issue now. Right. So if you have an issue with your child or your grandchild, your nephew, niece, your guardian of them, and you know that you have an issue with them, and then you just send them off to school to impact an entire school or classroom, it's not fair. It's not fair at all. Right? Recognize you have an issue. There are resources available, even in the school, that you can go to and say, hey, listen, I know that my son or my nephew or my daughter is, has these bullying tendencies, and I want to try to figure out how to resolve them.
Right.
People will guide you in the right direction in terms of dealing with that. But for you to brush it off and say, well, it's not my problem from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, it's the school's problem, and it's the problem of every student in that school is unfair.
It's unfair.
It's unfair.
Yes.
Well, listen, man. I know hanging there with your son. My advice in terms of that is to, I would say this: for any kid that's being bullied, they feel vulnerable.
Right.
Right. They feel very fragile, and it is really, really important to listen to them, to let them know that you care, and to show them that you advocate for them.
Right.
Right? Because they're in a space and they don't have the tools. And this is why you have the age range that you were just talking about, Beatrice, of children who are committing suicide, because they don't have the tools to adequately deal with the low self-esteem, the disappointment, the frustration, the anger, all of those emotions that are just swirling around in their heads. And they need somebody to throw them a lifeline.
Right.
And that lifeline is you showing up at school. That lifeline is you being willing to have conversations with them and not hold them responsible for the feelings that they're feeling as they're going through this bullying.
Right. And instill that confidence in your son. I'm sorry, this is my cousin from LA. Hey, I'm sorry that your son is going through that. I know as parents, we want to protect our children. And some parents, when I put my post out there, I had parents saying, I fight kids, like I'll put my hands on the child, they mess with my child, and as a father, I know how tough it can be, because you want your son to be macho, camacho, and to stand up and defend himself, but at the same time, you want to teach him, how to, behave, how to not act crazy like the society wants us to act, As a black man, you get angry, you looking like the crazy monkey in the jungle, you know what I'm saying? Right. How they label us. So it's like a catch-22. But I would just say continue to just, instill confidence in him, let him know like nothing's wrong with you. It's that person that something is wrong. And unfortunately, hurt people.
Absolutely.
Hurt people, and a lot of these children are being hurt at home or dealing with other issues that we may not know about. But it's up to us to get to the root of the issue and have these conversations, have these dialogues.
But where do you believe that? So at some point, if everybody believes that, so the counselors at school, the administration at school, the teacher, right? They all conclude that it's this person or it's this group of people. I think at some point, and this is one of the things that I love about say private schools or charter schools, some, not all, is that the level of involvement and engagement required by the parent, you see, helps mitigate some of these things.
Right.
Definitely.
So when you're in a traditional public school setting where you have so much bureaucracy and parents don't have to be involved. You can't make a parent come. You can't do these kind of things. So now you're punishing a kid. And like you said, hurt people. So if the kid's already hurt.
Right.
And the school system is punishing the kid and punishing the kid and punishing the kid, and the parent at home is not intervening and doing what needs to be done to make this kid whole, what do you think is going to happen? Hurt people. So there has to be some way to force the parent's hand and to force their engagement.
I'm so glad. I'm sitting here thinking, not to cut you off, but I'm sitting here thinking that back in the day, there used to be fines imposed on parents when their children didn't come to school, when they had so many tardiness or absences. The parent actually used to get a fine. This was back in the day. I don't know what happened to that rule, that structure, but I feel like parents need to be held accountable. And how do we get the parents involved? I think that there needs to be a mandate where if you have to come to parent conferences, you have to come, or you're gonna need a fine. You're gonna get fined, whether it's $25, $50. If you don't show up, there needs to be some sort of mandate where you have to attend a certain amount of whatever. You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree. I mean, look, in the real world that we live in, if you take days off of work, it costs you, right? I think that the same thing has to happen, not only in terms of students or parents having to come when the school calls when there's an issue, but I think that also parents need to be more accountable for the time that their kids are not in school. Right, because all of those things are factors that play themselves out in the streets, in the jails, and unemployment rates, and all those other kinds of things. So, if you have a kid, you got to be responsible. You got to do the work, because your child isn't living in isolation of the rest of the world. Your child is a part of a community, whether you like it or not. And your child, if they're ill-equipped when they get old enough, they will become a menace to society. Right, and so now society has to deal with that. $30,000 a year, or whatever the cost is to incarcerate a person, and then outside of the incarceration of the person now, has issues almost for the rest of their lives. Right, even if at some point they decide, what I did was really wrong. I want to be a better person. They're so far behind the eight ball sometimes that they can't get to where it is that they need to get to be productive members of society. And it all starts at home.
Right.
Absolutely.
All of that starts at home. So I agree, we have to figure out a way, the system has to figure out a way, since parents don't want to parent, the system has to take the role of being the ultimate parent of some of these parents, and forcing their hands, and then
I agree,
finding them or something like that. Well, listen, man, I feel for what you're going through. Keep it up. Keep us posted on how things go, if they improve.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for the call. How's the weather how's the weather out there in LA, man?
It's right now it's 50 degrees. It'll be 80 degrees today.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, I'm jealous too.
Sunshine weather.
All right, enjoy it.
Love you guys.
Thank you.
So,
but yeah, I really strongly feel like parents need to be held accountable. You have to show up. You have to be involved in your kids' education, their growing process. And if you can't, the system, unfortunately, has to take over.
But you know what I want to tell you? And this show even is indicative of where we as a community are in terms of education. Tuesday's show, when I'm talking about education, we're talking about issues like this, has the lowest number of viewers than any other show.
Wow.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah, it is.
But we've been paying attention to the numbers here. When we're talking about education, We're talking about community involvement in education. We're talking about our kids' futures. We're talking about issues like this. It has the lowest number of listeners and viewers.
Wow.
You can go back and look. All the Tuesday show. And so it says to me that folks in our community just don't care.
Right.
And so if it says it to me, and if we can see it in the numbers, and you guys go look, you'll be astonished. Go look at the numbers. I'm not lying. If we can see through these numbers that folks don't care, then the kids believe that the community doesn't care.
Right.
And so I like what you said, hurt people hurt people. So these kids who, whatever they're going through, who don't feel like they're getting the support, the encouragement, the love, the attention. You know, you set them off with an iPad or an iPhone. You sit them in the room to watch whatever they want to watch, unsupervised.
Right.
Right. No family dinners. Do you know what I'm saying? None of those things.
Right.
All those things impact.
It does.
In its formative years, how kids socialize, how they think about themselves, how they think about other people. You know, so, but for me, the biggest concern that I have, and now does the school have this? They have a crises counselor.
They have counselors. They do. They do have counselors.
So outside of you having your conversation with the administration, with the Board of Education, with the teacher, with trying to talk to the other parent, how is the school administering resources to your daughter to make sure that psychologically and emotionally she's sound?
So far, they haven't done anything as far as giving her that type of support, besides giving, the principal gave his word that he would make sure that nothing happens to her. And
but like, something's already happened to her.
Right, yeah, right, exactly. But as far as someone physically hitting her again, he's like, I'm like, how can you assure you're gonna walk her around class, around the school all day as her bodyguard? You can't assure that you can't give my daughter that type of assurance that you're ensuring nothing is gonna happen to her again. You know, so like I said, I've taken things into my own hands as far as, having her talk to someone, talk to me. She's going to be enrolled in boxing because she definitely at this point needs to know how to protect herself, Fortunately, Eric, we do have some wonderful teachers, and there's many times when the parents are lacking and being involved in their children's life, and we have counselors and teachers at school who pick up that slack, and their kids can come to their teacher. When I was in high school, I went through a period of depression, and I had a counselor that I was able to go to.
That's why I was asking about a counselor for your daughter.
Right. His name was Mr. Carroll, and he would allow me to come into his office and vent and talk about this, that, and the third, and it was very supportive for me. So there are some great teachers out there who the children, if you're having issues at home, what I would say to the kids, if you're having issues and you feel like you don't have anybody to talk to, find that teacher who you feel it can listen, and be there for you, because parents unfortunately are just not as involved in their children's life. Like, there's no way that those girls are sending out those messages to my daughter and their parents haven't checked their phone. And if their parents checked their phone, they should have gave me a call and said, I found this in my daughter's phone. I had that situation happen with my son, where he was being picked on by this boy. The boy was sending him messages, cursing at him, using vulgar language. His mother gave me a call and said, this is what I found in my son's phone, and I wanted you to know that what was going on. And I was like, well, thank you. It had just happened like two days ago. So I didn't do I do a random, phone check at least twice a week. So this happened off the clock, but even for me, it's a lesson for me that I'm checking their phones every day. When my kids come home from school, they put their phones on the dresser. There's no phones allowed after that. Once you walk your foot in the house, you put your phone on the dresser. That's it. And so I think parents just need to be more involved and know what's going on. It's no way that, these girls were talking languages. There's this thing, Eric, now called roasting. Have you heard of it?
No, I know roasting is telling jokes and kind of.
But what the kids have done now, so when you're roasting somebody, you're saying the most hurtful things to the person that could potentially lead up to a fight or cause them to really want to go hurt themselves. You have to say something so hurtful, and that's what they but it's not funny. There's nothing funny about picking on somebody.
Right.
You calling out the flaws, if something was wrong with your sneakers or your hair or your clothes, or you're calling out all of these imperfections that you see in a person to make other people see them, so that then they can laugh at the child. And it's
so that's going on in school.
That's going on. I always do the chaperoning when it comes to trips and stuff at school for my kids. And I'm on a bus ride, and then these kids are going in on each other, hiking on each other. I had to look over and say to them, stop. They were doing it in front of me, so they have no respect for authority
for when they do it or how they do it.
Right.
So here there was a young lady that I had on the show, Chrissy, who's part of a wonderful organization, No Means No. Focused on helping folks who have been sexually harassed or molested, raped. And she was saying that one of the things that she missed from her parents is not just asking, is anybody doing anything to you?
Right.
But asking, are you doing anything to anybody?
Right.
And when she sat in that chair over there and said that to me, I said, wow, that's deep.
That is. For
a parent to say to their child, hey, listen, are you creating issues out there? Mm-hmm. Not just about how are you being treated,
right,
but how are you treating other people?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it would help,
right,
if parents ask that question, how are you treating other people?
Right.
Have you hurt anybody today? Have you said any hurtful things to people today?
Yeah.
But it requires the parent engaging with their child, right? Which unfortunately doesn't happen, and the excuses are, work,
right,
1 job, 2 jobs, whatever it is. But you have to figure out how to make it happen. Because again, what's happening is by you not engaging with your child, by you not doing those kinds of things at home, you're unleashing a terror. Right? That's what it is. In a lot of cases, you're unleashing a terror on the community.
Right. Whenever I advocate for my children, I ask them straight up, tell me what you did. Mm-hmm. Because I can't go in here and fight for you if you got something you're keeping from me or you did something. You have to tell me the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Because it gives me, I'm not going to walk, don't put me in a situation where I'm walking into a blind situation and I get up in here and I'm defending you, and then come to find out you was, a part of the situation,
right. So how does your daughter feel about you coming to school and advocating for her?
Initially, she was. She feels proud. She's happy.
Okay.
She tried. I wanted to call, the different kids and ask to speak to their parents, and she's like, "No, please don't," because she didn't want to get picked on furthermore. But once I spoke to her and made her understand what was going on, and made her realize you can't think about other people at this point. It's about you, your health, your well-being. That's what you need to focus on. So what if this person don't speak to you? They were never your friend anyway. you know. And so now she's proud. She knows I have her back 100%. All of my children know if don't nobody have your back, my mom got my back. So.
Now, has it impacted her grades in school?
It has. I've been getting complaints from her teacher, like she's not focused. This is not the faith that I know, you know. Something's going on. I don't know what is. They're asking me, like, is there anything going on at home? And like I said, I'm putting all the pieces to the puzzle together now that I've gotten all the evidence as to why, she was, not doing well in school, being not focused, all because of these group of girls, there's 5 girls who are verbally, bullying her, and then there's the one that was physically hitting her and just pulling her hair and throwing paint on her, and she would come home with stained up clothes, scratches, and she would always make an excuse. Oh no, I made a mistake and did it, and then come to find out it was the girl all this time. I broke her designer glasses. It was a mess. So for me, naturally, I want to strangle somebody. Gonna get strangled, And when I talked to her mother, like I said, I thought that we would be able to sit down as 2 women who has daughters and be able to talk about it. But the mother was just as worse to as the daughter.
Hello, caller. Hello.
I forgot we were keeping her now.
Hello, caller.
Good morning, Eric. How you doing, sir? This is Shay Coulter.
Everything going all right, Shay? I thought I was going to have to leave the studio, man. It sounded like you had a situation going on.
No, that's one of the children I'm working with.
Oh, okay.
And you all are on the topic of therapeutic intervention. I just wanted to say, Eric, it's good that you brought a mom on so a mom can share her experience. And I just wanted to encourage that mom to know that she's not alone. This culture of bullying is something that has existed, I know.
Yeah, go ahead, Shay.
At least back to 1991, going back to first grade for myself. But we have to realize that other children sometimes that don't have the same home training as yours.
Right.
Sometimes kids can be very mean in school, and sometimes that's because of things taking place in the house. But one of the things that I saw over time that helped some of my friends that were really picked on really bad was their parent had to engage them in an extracurricular activity where they were able to experience another culture outside of their school. It could be maybe a female-related activity with other daughters that are going to be encouraging to her versus tearing her down. There are a plethora of organizations in Newark that are doing good work with females, and we'll try to post some of it in the thread. Eric, I didn't want to take too much of the time, but I just wanted you to tell you, Eric, thank you for doing this and having that mom on, and we just want her to know that the whole community understands that dynamic, and we want to keep you elevated in prayer and keep you encouraged.
Thanks for the call, Shay.
Hey, Eric, I just want to say I love you, Eric. This Leonard Ellis, man, you're doing a good thing, man. Love you, man.
Hey, brother, love you too, man. Thank you for calling. But here's the issue with what Shay just said, and I hope he does put those resources in the thread. It still requires the other parent to do something, right? The resource is there, but the other parent has to acknowledge, firstly, that their child is doing something and that their child needs some help, right? Maybe counseling or maybe just an extracurricular activity. Maybe back to Dawn and the grandson, wrestling. Right, enroll them in a wrestling program. So you got a rough and tumble kid, let them rough and tumble. Right. You have a young lady, and she's having some issues. Maybe it has to do with her own self-esteem. Sometimes people project. Right. So while they're talking about you, they really feel bad inside themselves. And they don't know how to deal with that, so they project that, and then they take it out on you. but the parent has to get involved. And again, I'm concerned now that if you're telling me that your daughter's school work is suffering, right? Her academic experience is suffering, and teachers are aware of this. To me, it's backwards, right? Because we say we want our children to come to a safe environment where they can learn, so that they can be explorers of the world, and they can be competitive for jobs and all that kind of stuff. And so now you have a kid who's right there ready to learn, and we drop the ball and we fail to provide the environment for them to do that. And then we see the fallout, which is that the child is now suffering academically, and we're paralyzed in our ability to help. That makes no sense to me. I want you guys to understand that. That makes absolutely no sense. That you have these educators, you have all of these people who are around and they're watching this flower just wilt. And they're doing nothing. That's sad. So she's in what school?
Maplewood Middle.
Maplewood Middle.
It's called MMS in Maplewood.
Is that the school that's right there on?
It's off of Valley. It's on Burnett Street in Maplewood. Like going down into the Valley. It's right off of Valley Street.
Okay.
In Maplewood, yeah. Past like the Board of Education and stuff.
Well, we have to figure this out. And so your next steps are what?
My next step is to see they're doing an investigation, speaking with the girl, everybody involved. I listed everybody in the complaint that I made. And so once they're found to be, that they were bullies, then they're going to have to, whatever. I don't know what the repercussions are, for that. Whether it's expulsion or whatever, I'm not sure. But I advised the mother that I will be taking criminal actions against a child if the behavior is not correct. If I find out that my daughter was hit again, then there will be criminal charges brought up against her. But as far as what the school does is they mandate that the kid go to counseling and different things like that if it's found to be that.
But you have text messages.
Right, I have all.
You have all of that
right.
that you've given to them.
So yeah, I'm not sure what.
So the investigation shouldn't take that long to be able to determine that. And in fact, you know what? The investigation, as far as I'm concerned, time is of the essence.
Right. And that's what I told the principal.
Time is of the essence, right? Every day that this is not being done, their daughter doesn't necessarily want to go to school. She doesn't feel safe, comfortable in that environment. She's not focusing on learning. Right. So time is of the essence. And so if you are looking at these, first thing that they can do in the investigation, I don't know if they've done this, bring all those kids in and say, did you do this?
Right.
No, they said they did it. Investigation's over. They did it.
Right.
And now whatever the repercussions are the repercussions. And they should always be to protect and defend your daughter.
Right. Right. Well, today she didn't want to go to school. She cried. She made up every excuse as to, her stomach was hurting, this is hurting. She didn't want to go. And I'm like, Faith, I know you don't want to go because you don't want to face, because I took her out of school immediately after that happened. So this is her first day back to the school. So I had her brothers to chaperone her, throughout the school because they also attend the school with her. So they've been advised. They have her schedule at school. They'll be following her, to each class, picking her up from the class. So until the principal, removes the girl from the classroom. But at this point, I feel like, I don't know. My hands are tied. I don't know necessarily, what course of action to take outside of what I've already done to.
Look, I got to tell you, there are probably a lot of people who are in this thread who are biting their tongues, so much so that they're probably drowning in their own blood because harken back, man, to when I was in grade school, and this would have been dealt with.
Yeah.
It would have been dealt with. Some cousins or some friends would have been invited to come up to the school, and there would have been an ass whooping.
Right.
Right, and then it would have been dealt with.
Right. We've explored those options.
No, and you know what?
but
the thing is that
if I'm in jail, I can't take care of my kids.
No. I'm not condoning that. But I am deeply concerned about this other young lady too. Right. So I'm concerned about Faith.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm also concerned about this other young lady.
Yeah.
Especially given what you've told me about her mom.
Right.
Right. That her mom isn't. And so I'm saying to myself, this other young lady is trapped in a really dysfunctional situation.
Right.
And whatever she's going through, whatever she's dealing with, this is how she's choosing to express it. Right. And they may be cries for help.
Right.
For her.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the ass kicking's not gonna resolve her issues.
Right.
In terms, she'll just go find somebody else to pick on.
Right. And she's a pretty little girl. Pretty girl. You would think, she's not even capable of doing what she's doing. But I was to the point where I had to talk to Jesus for about an hour to calm me down. I wanted to really strangle her mother. I'm looking at her.
How old was her mother?
I want to say maybe in her maybe 36 or 37 or something. She was mature looking. Mm-hmm. But she had this edgy roughness about her. Her whole demeanor, was just so, just angry. Like she was just an angry black woman sitting here, and while my daughter's explaining the situation, what happened, she was looking at my daughter like with an ill face as my daughter was explaining. My daughter talks very, if you want to say, she has that Valley Girl voice. So she talks, that's how she talks. So I don't know if that was annoying her, but as my daughter was talking, the mother was looking at my daughter like, and I'm trying to compose myself, like, why are you looking at my child like this when she's explaining to you that your child hurt her? Like, I wanted to jump over the table and just knock her out. Like, this is where your child gets that from you. Because you're trying to intimidate my child by looking at her with a screw face when she's explaining what your child did to her. And I was so offended by that. And I'm looking at the principal like, do you see what's going on here? So for me, I had to remove myself from the room in a situation because I felt I knew that I would have been going to jail, being locked up in Maplewood. I'm Lady V. I can't have that happening. So I'm just like, before I see myself going to jail, let me remove myself and my child. I ended the meeting. I said, I can't do this. What I'm going to do right at this point is just press charges on your child and let the system deal with it.
So what I'd like to be able to do, I mean, I won't use your name, but I which is what I told the other parent. I just would like to know, as media, to contact, because I think that we should know, parents should know, should be very clear about what the protocols are in the various schools regarding bullying. Right. Now, I'd asked Donald Jackson Jr., who is a former board member in the city of Newark, to join us today. His schedule didn't permit. But he and I had a conversation about, what the protocol is in Newark, and I can't imagine it differs too much from that in Maplewood. But just to get clarity, so that maybe even through this show we can give proper information to parents or guardians who are currently dealing with this situation, so they know what the proper recourse is. Right. Because you don't want to see it get to the point, because you love your kid.
Well, right.
You know what I mean? And there's some people who may be less composed than Lady B.
Right.
Right. And we'd hate to see any parent feel like they've reached the end of
right.
What's reasonable.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And advocating for their kid. And it's important for the school districts to understand that, you got parents who love their kids.
Yeah.
And you should recognize that. And so while you're, filing your nails and taking your time and going through some elongated investigation where you may already have all the information, you can act swiftly in order to protect this child.
Right.
Right? Parents are going to feel some sort of way about this, and you don't want it to bubble up. So,
and just like kids can be pushed to the limit, when they feel like their back is up the wall and they're being bullied and they get to that point where they're bringing that knife. A parent can be pushed to the limit too when they feel like administration is not doing their jobs, doing what they're supposed to do. So it's not like, now do I take it into my own hands to do what I got to do, to actually say to my daughter, you need to go defend yourself. You need to fight this girl. You need to have a one-on-one and finally, get this out. Like, I don't want it to get to that point where it gets ugly, because like you said, we love our children.
Right. So I think so what I will say is this. I don't advocate violence. Mm-hmm. But I do promote defending yourself.
Right.
And I guess that's where, my dad evolved with me. That he removed himself from advocating violence.
Right.
But promoted me defending myself.
Right.
And made it clear to the school that if you guys can't, he's going to defend himself.
Right.
It's just, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It is really heartbreaking. People ask me all the time, say, would you go back and, I wish I was back in grade school. I wish I was back in high. I don't.
No.
You know what I mean? I don't. All those times were really, really rough.
Yeah.
They were very, very challenging times. And so I hope that Faith, great name, by the way, I hope that she's able to overcome this. And I hope that the school acts, and I hope that you would come back and let us all know,
what the outcome,
what the outcome is, whether you were able to reach some resolution in it.
Right.
I hate having these kinds of shows, but they're necessary because these are things that are going on in our community.
Right.
To hear that men and women are dealing with it. Is in your cousin in California is dealing with it. Something that's happening. What does Deidre say here? But then schools will run and call. No, there will be no violence. We're not talking about that, Deidre. We don't want. We don't want that. I remember. Like little tiny things, Beatrice, taking my kids to the playground and teaching my kids to stand in line. Right? And you see other kids shoving and moving them out of the way, and my kids didn't understand it, right? Like, well, if he can go, why can't I go? Right. And you try to teach them the rules. And the same thing. Turn. And you say, wait your turn, right? Share, all those things. Say please, say excuse me.
Right.
But even in those settings, you would have those ignorant parents who would sit and watch their children.
Right, and not say anything.
I got a really funny story I got to tell you. So my second oldest daughter is bigger than my oldest daughter.
Okay.
Right? So Lucy Emma, right now, she's 5'11".
Wow.
Right? She's my rugby player. And I think she wears the same size shoe as I do.
Really?
Right? So I wear a 10.5 men's. So she wears.
Right.
And when they were little, the ballrooms, I call them like the Petri dishes, the ballrooms at Burger King where the kids go and play, right? Where all the germs fester.
Right, yeah.
Well, my youngest kid was playing in the ballroom, and there was this one rambunctious kid who just kept like walking through that clear door and just banging my kid over, right? And I'm sitting there, and you know, you hope that your kid figures it out, right? So I'm not like quick to go up and say anything. I'm trying to wait to watch, but the kid just continues to do it. Every time, you know, Olivia was going to the door, he would do that. So Lucy, who is 3.5 years younger, but even as a kid, she was like, you know, I remember one day somebody asked her what her name is. She said, "My name is Emma." Like, that was her. Right. So that same rambunctious kid is coming through the door, and he sees Emma, and he goes to try to. And I gotta say, she couldn't have been older than like 3.5. Really? She leveled this kid, laid this kid out, like didn't hit him, just like her upper body, just leveled the kid. And at that point, the parent jumps up. Right? The parent jumps up, and I said, "What's going on?" I said, "They're figuring it out. Right. You know, your kid is doing all of this stuff." And so I said, you know, and maybe I shouldn't have been, but I was so very, very proud of my. I'm so very proud of my kid.
That was a proud daddy moment.
You know, it was a proud daddy moment, you know. And, you know, and now she's my gentle giant. Right. You know, I call her. You know, she has a heart of an angel. But, you know, she's one of those kids who won't take anything, you know, from anybody. You know, so, but that is my,
They're all cracking up.
Oh, God, I'm sorry.
I wish my daughter had a little bit of my DNA in her outside of her looks, because I don't tolerate nonsense back then, and I don't tolerate it now. I came from a strict home. My father was an alpha male, very strict. And he taught me, you know, don't let anybody push you over. And I've always been like that. So for me to watch my daughter have to just go through something totally different and not have, you know, that fight in her, you know, it's kind of like mind-boggling, you know.
Hit her. No, don't hit her. Hello, caller.
Hello, Eric. It's Dave Tucker. How are you?
Hey, Dave. What's going on, man?
To add a little bit of brightness to the day, I definitely feel for your guest, but I got home about 20 minutes ago from First Avenue School in Newark. I went down there for a celebrity read. And the amount of respect that those kids showed us adults, and the amount of respect that the kids that I read the story to showed me, said an awful lot. And I'm certainly hoping that these kids grow up to be just like they are right now. It was very heartwarming and very touching to see a group of kindergartners that were so loving. One of the kids, when I got done reading the story, asked if he could give me a hug. And I said, "Sure, you can give me a hug." And he came up to hug me, but the problem is the whole class heard him and bum rushed me. and they almost knocked me back with their group hug.
Wow.
But it's nice to see kids it's nice to see that there's a good side of kids. And I hope these kids continue to behave as well as they did today.
That's great. That's a great story. Thanks, Dave. You know, but that's how we want all our kids to grow up. Right? That is what I'm talking about. You want them all to have that experience and to just, you know, love life and love living and love learning and meeting new friends and then, you know, learning how to end friendships and all that other kind of stuff. But when you have a child whose stomach is churning because they have to figure out how to that's the word you used. Survive. That's no way for any of us to want our kids to live. Right. We want them to live. We want them to do exactly what. I mean, well, not the age of your daughter. You don't want to run it up and hugging Dave after he reads the story now. But
that's when they're most impressionable. That was a nice story. But that those kids are. This is when we can influence them at that tender age.
Right.
So now that we know, society knows that bullying is a major issue. How do we deal with it? How do we get to the root of it? We have to start while the kids are young and impressionable and teaching them. You're never too young to start learning. And since we know that this is an issue, kids are like sponges at that age. We need to start getting it in their psyche at that tender age. Like, this is how you play. This is how you get along. This is wrong. This is right. And it starts at school because it starts at home. Mm-hmm. But because our kids are in school learning, there should be some sort of curriculum established in school, in pre-K, where they're being taught. And it carries on to each stage of their...
And I'm gonna ask about that too, whether or not there is some curriculum or whether there can be some for that. Well, listen, guys, I want you to know if you're experiencing either you have a bully or you have a child who's being bullied, it's a conversation that I'm willing to continue to have on the show because it's one that needs to be had, and we have to try to crack the code to it and get to a solution. Because at the end of the day, if we don't, it will lead to kids dropping out of school. It will lead to a higher suicide rate. It will lead to kids going to prison. It will lead to some of our kids being laid dead on the street. It'll lead to all of those things. So let's try to nip it in the bud if we can in our community. Beatrice.
Thank you.
Anytime you want to come in, I keep telling people I got 5 mics here, man, and I need company. So anytime you want to come in and talk about anything that's going on in the community, just let me know.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Now, oh, here we go.
You don't have a caller, right?
No.
What it used to be, there's so much hatred, war and poverty.
Can you hear outside of the studio?
I have microphones. In each of the
what you have to say. They're the ones who's coming.
Right, because see the black cord is a microphone that's going into another set of headsets. So then everything you can hear, they can hear on YouTube and on Facebook.
If we just let it be.
You have to figure that out as well.
World won't get no better. We gotta change it, just you and me.
Thanks for listening to the Eric Dawson Radio Show. Now that you've received this dose of thought-provoking information, why not put it to good use? Spread the word and turn your knowledge into action.
That's always helpful. Folks become more informed, and hopefully through the discussion, we can engage them, and then through the information, they can be empowered to make a change in the community.
Tune in regularly for more food for thought. This has been the Eric Dawson Radio Show on RTH 2000.